Hey, everyone. Welcome to In Case You Missed It, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's In Case You Missed It. Very simple, very straightforward. We're going to be going over a couple of things that have come through over the last few weeks. We're also going to be going over some things that have happened recently, as well as some things that are happening soon. Which I guess that one's not really in a if you missed it part, because that's...
In case you're planning on missing it.
In case you're planning on missing it, we'll talk about it now, and then when you do miss it...
In case you missed the announcement.
There'll be... That's way better.
Yes, I'm
so
I'm
good.
That's why you get paid the big bucks, bro.
On God.
Oh, God. No, on God. It's Gore, Trelli, Myf, and Jmac. And the only reason I did it that way is because that's how I wrote it down. So, boom, 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 boom. We just sit
made
down
an X.
sometimes.
Almost.
Yeah.
It's more like a fish kind of shape.
Yeah.
Fish.
Yeah, it's a fish.
We're a fish.
We're a big body of...
Man, what else did you write down, Gore?
Yeah, you know what? I wrote down Gauntlet talk because that's something that happened and something that you may or may not have missed. The Gauntlets came through. So what we were doing and what we had was 6 teams from Europe, 6 teams from North America. They were the SEC teams. Bottom seeds play each other. Winner of that plays 4th seed. Winner of that plays 3rd, plays 2nd, plays 1st. Winner goes to Roll Stars. That's still a couple weeks away from now. And so the question and the goal was... figure out who that's going to be. And so, yeah, get 2 teams, one from NA, one from EU. And I wrote down specifically North America first. This is a team or a region that brought a lot of names, right, that we're pretty familiar with at this point, not just from having to do SEC, but some of them who have just been around for a while. Some of them, I believe, ex-SBL, which also is true in Europe. But this path was definitely a lot more... mixed overall than what we got to see, I think, in Europe, because Europe, we saw, spoiler alert, the Tanuki just kind of go for a while, and so it was like every now and then it was new team versus Tanuki, while North America was new faces showing up. I think the Scorpions ended up losing their matchup, then Valkyries ended up winning out from the end. And so, you know what, Trelli? I pulled a straw in my head, and you got it.
I thought you put me down first. I was already ready.
Oh, nice. Well, so let's talk about the Valkyries, really. I mean, this entire event, relatively interesting weekend, but the Valkyries being the dominant force that they were was very different from the Valkyries that were playing in Phase 1.
Yeah, this is the Valkyries we expected to see when we heard that this team was going to be in the SEC, right? I think everyone, once we saw this roster, they didn't make it in the SPL, they didn't qualify in, the Gladiators beat them out. We're like, okay, unlucky for everyone else, because the Valkyries are just going to dominate SEC, and that's going to be it. And then first couple of weeks go by, we see that they're not treating it as seriously as we would have expected.
Call a spade a spade. Say what you want to say.
And they were not playing as well as we know they could. They show up to their first LAN event and they get destroyed because they weren't practicing. Then I think that was a wake-up call because they expected at the very least to, I assume, be number 1 seed in the SEC. I think we all expect them to be that caliber. They did not make any of those mistakes. Their God pools were on point. I love their drafting. I think they played picks and bans just about as perfectly as you could. And then just dominance on field, as you would expect from a squad that's got, Sanford Soccer, Aquarius, Crimson was playing on point. I think the duo lane, Gamma and Wowie, were actually nuts, which was like wild to see. I think that they were just diffing everyone. I'm like, This is what we expected. I'm like, this is the team that we've been waiting to see. So once we saw that sort of in their first matchup, I was like, can they replicate this on the higher seeds? And clearly they were able to.
It was, I think, something we had expected for them. And, I think me and you had talked about this a lot on the desk. I don't know if y'all mentioned it that much, but every time we saw it, we were like, okay, so we're mentioning Phase 1, but also, Sam was playing Anubis. Sam was playing...
Nox,
yeah. Sam was playing not junglers. And lo and behold, the team was 3rd seed, which is honestly, considering your jungler's doing that, 3rd seed's still kind of amazing in a competitive setting. And so to see them, I think, kind of to buckle down, you had mentioned it, but Wowie doing really well. It was just impressive to watch the Valkyries go. And so they are going to be one of 2 teams that is joining us in the Roll Stars, which we'll get into that later. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's going to be teams of the roles playing against each other. A lot of fun. But they're going to be the second team that qualified. The first team was the Wargs from Europe. Now, again, this was a team or a region that it felt like this one was going to be the one where it was like, okay, so every time you add a new seed, that's just going to be who wins, and then move on to the next guy, that's going to be who wins. And it was going to be a kind of bland gauntlet. And then the Tanuki, Jmac, the Tanuki They did Tanuki things, I guess.
Kooky.
Yeah, the Tanuki
Little
really
tricksters.
just kind of showed up. It was a team, it was rated, I think they were actually rated 6th seed, if I'm not mistaken, during all of theirs. So for them, it was kind of the expectation, 5th versus 6th, especially with teams that kind of just got relegated up into SCC at that point. You kind of expect them to have a nice little battle. I believe it was a 2-1 for their very first set. And then they go 2-0, and then they go 2-0 again, and then they still go 2-1 against the Wargs at that point. That was finally where they had their drop-off point. The Tanuki really came out to surprise, and I think that's always the exciting part of new teams in the SCC, especially over in Europe, because it feels like it's almost anyone's game over in Europe at this point. You have the Wargs and the Mambo. Those are pretty much your clear-cut, kind of top 2 teams out there. But whenever you kind of jump beyond the top 2 and you start saying, okay, who's number 3, who's number 4, it really feels like it's a little bit more up in the air. And I think that Tanuki made a really good showing to start out and show that they do have what is capable of taking down even former pros. I mean, they were going against players like Zeros and just diffing their team. They were going against, even whenever they got up to the Wargs winning up at that point just shows that, the Tanuki can still go toe-to-toe. Remember, they took them 2-1 in their set. That wasn't like a 2-0 blowout for the Wargs. That was a long-running set between those two. So Tanuki, I think they've done their job of impressing not just me, but probably the fans at home, and have probably made a few extra fans over this event.
Yeah, honestly, it's a team that now, when we see the next, I guess, iteration of Europe and the SEC and what it's going to be, especially how that's going to lead into postseason, which I'm going to be honest right now, I haven't looked at any of the details, so I don't know what their postseason looks like, but I'm imagining Tanuki is definitely going to be at least in the conversation for that over the next couple of months when we go through that phase. But it is the Wargs, right? Davey, Preds, Hawk, Worst Turtle, Panvich that qualify. A team that look real good when they end up winning. Myf, I believe you had said they were not just lengthy games, very competitive games. And the fact that they kind of beat out a team like Hex Mambo, which catches me off guard, is a huge deal for them to be able to make it here.
Yeah, I thought that matchup was interesting for a few reasons. One, how equally matched they were, I think made it for a very intriguing Smite. For those of you that didn't get to watch it, both games go over the 50-minute mark. Both games generally had about a 6,000 gold lead throughout the early to mid game, but would stagnate as we started to approach objectives. And then it became these long, drawn-out dances around Fire Giants, Gold Furies, and essentially came down to a coin toss of who won the last team fight, and both times it was the Wargs. So a 2-0 victory in about 100 minutes combined game time for them over Hex Mambo. But in spite of it, not once did the Wargs win the fan vote. Online. Every single time everybody's voting for Hex Mambo. I'm sure the performance at Worlds probably plays into that a little bit, even if it is a different composition, or team roster, I should say. But as for the Wargs themselves and how well they play, it is a distinctly European style. They're going to take you to the 5-on-5 engagement in the late game. They're going to play the standard drafts. They're very competitive in that regard, reminiscent of maybe a PK in like season 7, season 8, somewhere in there, or maybe I hesitate to say Camelot Kings because the Kings did still play faster, but they were another team that would be very willing to grab first blood and say, ha ha ha, there goes your early game potential. I'm going to hang out with this 1,000 gold lead for as long as possible. I'll, as always, really curious to see how well that play style or even that ideology will match up as they start to come out locally, play here in Georgia. But certainly a team you need to keep your eyes on, and I don't think anybody's really surprised that this Wargs roster made it through. I mean, these fellas have been to just about every single land that a Europe SEC has been invited to. So I think essentially falls within the realm of expectation for the majority of like analysts and everyone else watching.
And it's going to be fun to watch again. Them, alongside the Valkyries, are going to be joining, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's just a majority of the SBL pros, if not all of them.
I think it's all of them.
And essentially, and this is spoiler alert because you can see it over there behind Jmac. Well, not behind Jmac, in front of Jmac. Right down there where it says Divisional Stars. We're going to be talking a little more about that and what exactly that means. And specifically how that relates to Roll Stars, which is where those guys are going. So they qualify as the Valks and the Wargs, which is funnier to me because they aren't playing as the Valks or the Wargs once they get there. They're getting split up. And of course, Roll Stars is going to be a very interesting, I want to say, I can't remember if it's like a dodgeball-esque thing where it's just kind of like, hey, I'm Captain 1, you're Captain 2, let's choose.
So what it will be is the winner, the two teams that win, or I should say make it to finals for Divisional will be the captains for all of the roles there, and then they'll snake draft them that way.
Nice. Nailed it. That was spot on.
That's why we keep them here.
That's why we keep them here. Look, and
That's the only reason. Watch.
Divisional Stars is
As soon as we stop needing format videos, I'm gone. YouTube.com/SmitePro, or SmitePro has the format video up there.
Oh, there
there you go.
Jmac's job is safe.
for now. We've got at least probably 2 to 3 more format videos. At least one.
least.
Here's the thing, though.
this year.
We can just plan them out and get them to like pre-record like 6 format videos.
True.
Yeah,
And then I'm
like
out of here
next
next
week.
month.
That's how you know. Just say no if someone's like, "Hey, man, we got a couple format videos we need you to work on." Say, let's space it out.
Hey,
There's
Jmac,
gonna be
we
a
want you to do
point-
the world's
let's wait a
video.
little bit
You're
here.
gonna go on vacation like sometime through phase 2, and everyone's gonna like point back to this and be like, "Oh my god, wait, did the arcade return?" Like, was that like?
I'm going to
were
be
they
missing for
real?
one weekend.
But before we talk about Divisional Stars, roster changes. That's another thing that if you have not been paying attention, holy, yes, it has happened. One team in the SPL has gone completely unchanged, and that's the Ferrymen.
Oh yeah.
So we can get that out of the way.
Nice.
Everybody else has had something happen, whether it's coaches disappearing or just leaving. I guess in one case it's
Do we have a
retiring is the technical term.
disappearance?
Well,
We know where he's at.
Well, no, yeah, good point. Okay, we know where he
he's at.
went. We tracked everybody.
retirement, I guess, is
We have
a
one
way
retirement.
to put it.
So there's and perfectly the things that are highlighted. Those are the guys that are new. So Quig's on the Kings. You've got Neil Ma now playing for the Hounds. Ravens' main roster is the exact same, but their coach is now playing for the Hounds. The Ferrymen, everything stayed the same. You look over towards the Warriors, they now have Genetics. Dragons, Marbuk, I believe, retired. If you look towards the Gladiators, you've now got Jake and Kana. And if you look towards the Leviathans, you've got Panda Cat, which you hopefully were watching that interview that I did earlier because I was pretty proud of it. So those are the quick and the quick and gritty. And I think we should jump into
The nitty gritty.
the nitty gritty.
Hit it.
The hottest
Witty.
first, which is Zapman gone, 3-time back-to-back-to-back world champion, out. Panda Cat in, and in this case, who's feeling hot about this? Who's
I
leaning
mean-
heavy on the carries?
I think it's an interesting change because this is not a hot take. Panda Cat's better at hitting his buttons. Panda Cat's going to solo people in lane more often. Panda Cat's going to land his auto attacks more often. So if we're talking raw mechanical skill, this is a blanket upgrade. I think that's a pretty fair assessment of it in that regard. But for the 3 years that Zapman was reigning world champion, not once did anybody say, wow, man, Zapman mechanicsed his way into this position, right? It's the intangibles. It's a bit. It's a meme when we talk about it. It's the things we can't measure. That's what Zapman brings to the team. But every single time I've had a conversation with Steven Zappis about Smite, he has struck me as one of the most Smite literate people I've ever met. He thinks greatly about the game. He's got great ideas about how a team should focus and what they should practice and how they should practice and how the game should be played. And without that leadership for this team, I wonder who steps up. Because Panda Cat, when you ask him, he'll say, yeah, I'm a shot caller. I do it all. And I think that plays into his machismo a little bit. Panda Cat's one of the most confident players that has ever graced the SPL. If I were to make like a top 2 list, it's of ego, it's like Sprack, and then it's Panda Cat, right? But I think it is very unlikely that he's going to have the same role in communication and out-of-game leadership and in-game leadership that Zapman brought. So I'll be curious to see what this does to the Leviathans.
Yeah.
We could be in an Oni Warrior situation where it's like, well, everybody's just kind of playing really well, so it looks really good no matter what, right? That was the main concern we had with the Warriors coming into this year was who's going to be the leader. Warriors say you don't need one, So that could be the Leviathans, or they could find themselves in a situation where it's similar to, I believe it was at the time, the Tartarus Titans, when they lost Cyclone Spin, all of a sudden a team that was looking really good starts to look lost for a little while until that Phenomenal Worlds run, but we'll see. I'm still on the fence about this change.
I know there was a lot of conversation, I think even in the interview that I did with Finoke and Slaney, where they were like, Zap was a leader.
Yeah.
And they said, but we didn't want the leader. Like, they were like, that's, with all the other stuff
We don't want to be
aside,
microed.
that's not what they had wanted. They wanted somebody else to step up. They wanted something different from what he was giving. And so I'm very much kind of with you where it's like, okay, you're going to get something different, but is it good different, bad different, same different? Which different are you going to get? And that literally only time will tell. We have to watch them play and see where they do. But I think Panda Cat, before that interview, I don't know if it got caught. It might have been recorded at one point. He did open up the SMITEPro League website, went to the standings, and he went, boys, 6th place. I'm not a 6th place team player. We're going to get that up. And I think
numbers.
that's exactly the kind of mentality. He's just like, he's not. Zapman's team, 6th place, coasting it all year, get first when it comes to Worlds.
Yeah, Zeb's like, all right.
And a cat team, if you're not first the whole time, something's probably gone wrong. And so I think that's going to be fun. But speaking of teams that were in first the whole time and changes that maybe blindsided us, were memed for quite a while as well, because I don't think there was ever really a specific, hey, this is why. I feel like everybody had a reason. You got like 4 or 5 from everyone involved, and not a single one of them made that much sense. Jake out from the Warriors. They have one of the most successful phases we've seen from a team, period.
The most.
And drop their support. Genetics gets pulled in for him, so a World's MVP to fill that spot. And so the question really is, will they still be Trelli, a dominant force in the SBL?
Well, if you look at
Answer
the change just by the fact that Genetics is widely considered one of the best players, period, not just support players, period, in Smite.
And shot caller.
Yeah, you'd think that that's a massive upgrade, and I think on paper it certainly is. But the way I see it, I have watched a lot of Genetics play, and he gets frustrated a bit. And I think the Kings...
That's a big point.
I think the Kings are relatively tame. The Warriors, they don't play like a team that Genetics wants to run the way I saw it, right? So either A, the Warriors are going to submit, and they're going to say, all right, Genetics, we are sheep, you are the sheep herder, tell us what to do.
They're called shepherds.
Yeah, whatever. Or B, Genetics is going to get frustrated. I mean, I've seen these guys play, right? They don't play traditional Smite. They don't do what you think they should. You know what I'm saying? Like, it seems like it's a frustrating team to try and, like, rein in. That's the way I see it. They are all really damn good at what they do, but I can't imagine having someone who's going to... Maybe that's exactly what they needed, though. You know, maybe they know better than anyone what they needed, and maybe Jake wasn't like keeping them in check, and Genetics is going to do it. If that's the case, then yeah, blanket upgrade. This team's going to be nuts. But I could see him getting frustrated, trying to be like, "Hey, Pagon, can we stop like diving their speed buff at like level 12? You know, can we just dial it back? You know, something like that."
Look,
I'm excited to see it.
we've heard a whole lot of reasons as to why this change had happened.
Right.
What I've pieced together and gleaned from it is that the majority of the reason Jake is off the Warriors is not for his gameplay.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at Reddit, all the question marks from you know, people speculating on this change is, why Jake? Why now? He's had his best phase ever. He's playing at his absolute peak, and he gets benched. It's because, as I understand it, he is a teammate that is very difficult to work with. He does not receive criticism very well, and if he'll listen to you, it'll go one ear, it'll go out the other, and it'll be like he never heard it, right? Oh, you're right, I shouldn't do that. Does it again immediately, right? So when you're in a situation like that, it can become very frustrating. Speaking from experience, I was that guy for a long time. You start playing Smite competitively at 15, you think you know everything about the game, you're going to play it your way. But I think the only saving grace that had kept Jake on this team for as long as he had been on it is the fact that they were winning. Had losses come sooner, I think changes probably come sooner as well. But I do think, Trelli, you bring up a phenomenal point, and it is how emotional a player Genetics is.
Oh, yeah.
We don't get to see it on Twitch streams very often. You don't get to see it, as a fan looking in. But I am in a very privileged position to be working in the building in which it happens. Yeah. And every time the Kings have lost, I mean, that guy is zooming out of the building. You could see it in the cams when he's talking up a storm. He's not handing compliments to his team when that's happening, right? When Lost's on the screen, nobody feels it more than Genetics does. So he's going to have the drive to win. He's probably leaned into the Oni Warriors' tendencies. He said he wants to be a more aggressive player. That's directly from him. Yep. So I think it is going to be a situation in which he tries to adapt to their play style. There's going to be growing pains. I'm very curious to see how the first few losses are received. Mm-hmm. I don't know that the Oni Warriors are going to have the level of patience with that emotional, reaction to these losses that the Camelot Kings did, because the Kings have been friends and living together and dealing with Genetics for years. This is what... I don't think Genetics has any competitive history with some of these players, right? This is just essentially a brand new team for him.
Just Netroid.
Just Netroid.
Yeah.
So,
how'd that go?
Oh, no. How did that go? Right? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. maybe Genetics is victory lapping. You say, look, I'm with the young guns. I'm just going to be a mechanical guy. If we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. He could be a complete 180 from where he was.
Yeah.
I don't think so, though.
I'm kind of curious. Yeah, I think it's one of two areas, but he's been known for shot calling that I feel like that has to come into it, right? It's like in-game leadership. And I'm kind of thinking like you can grab, and we saw this season 2 enemy. You take all 5 of those players individually, throw them on a different team. The only thing they really had going for them was any kind of mechanical skill they brought together. You put them under a guy who could shot call the game really well, and suddenly everything snaps into place and they're second place at Worlds. And it's like, maybe it's just one really good weekend for them. Maybe it has something to do with it, but they also had some really damn good phases. And so I feel like this could be one of those like, hey, these guys are really good individual pieces that really worked well together in phase 1. And now you've got something to snap them into maybe a world champion team that could be devastating, could not be devastating, and could fall apart because of emotions. Who knows? Hopefully they do at this point by now. But we'll definitely find out, I guess, throughout the phase, depending on how they go.
Just don't know.
Oh, they're still going to be a top team.
Oh, for sure.
Don't get it twisted. Jake played real well. Jake's not the reason they're 15-0 win streak, right?
No.
That is a full team effort. Genetics is certainly capable of playing at the same mechanical level as Jake, if not better.
Yes.
We've seen it plenty.
It's still going to be a real good mechanical team.
Yeah, it's still going to be really good.
I'm more worried. It's personalities,
Yes.
right? Which is, I think, the same thing we said going into this last phase. So instead, I'm going to reset and say, hey, they're just going to be first seed and they're not going to lose a single game or something like that. That's how phase 2 is going to go. The other half of that, and you can kind of see it right up at the top left of that graphic, which is with Jake leaving, which we talked a little bit about, I guess, or we will be talking a little bit about what that means for like the Gladiators, how that's going. Genetics filling his shoes. Who's filling Genetics' shoes? And that's Quig, who got pulled from the Hounds, which is a very interesting spot to be in if we're looking at it, because Jmac, Quig, I don't know why Quig, I guess, is really the better question.
I think it's because Quig fits the playstyle best. If you're losing Genetics and you look at all the other supports in the league, Aurora's not going to leave his squad.
And who's available?
That's not happening. Hurry's not going to leave his squad. He's too good in with them. Nobody else is really going to want to leave the team that they're on, whether it be a successful squad or an unsuccessful one. I mean, J-Dragon, sure, you can make a roster change over there. Maybe Mike wants to go to somewhere where it's working out. But I think for who's ready and available to leave, Quig is probably the best fit. While there's some SCC supports that you can maybe draw up and kind of pull from there.
Yep.
I think I'm grabbing Quig. He also just kind of fits that, I think, God pool that Genetics was also running. There are very few players in the league who are consistently running things like the Emoja, like the horse that he was going. Quig was one to kind of go towards that style, and while he is still very young, he has a lot of great mechanical skill to him. He's probably one of the better rookie supports we've had in some time.
Yeah.
And I think that just, in all honesty, I think Quig has been maybe a little bit slept on by the fans at home. I know that we've been kind of gassing him up in his time in the SCC, as his time here in the SPL. He is a damn good player at Smite. He is a very mechanically talented player, and he's also just really good at shot calling and recentering his team out there. I mean, you look at some of his past teammates, he's got to be the one to kind of dial things back in, and I think when you put him with a similar level of aggressive players that he's had in the past, now you're throwing him with Yarkor, who was widely hailed as one of the best players in the league, whether it be in the solo lane or in the duo lane. I think this is just a really good slot to put Quig in with this team. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. You're losing World's MVP support, but I think you're bringing up probably the next big generation of support to your team.
I think that the most difficult part of this transition for Quig is going to go from playing with your friends, you know, guys that you're grinding in the SCC with, that you're on the come up with, guys that you would almost see as equals. I doubt Quig joins the Camelot Kings, looks to his left and looks to his right, and like, yeah, I'm right there with these guys. These are cemented legacy household Smite names, current reigning world champions on a team that is capable of doing a lot. So I think there is going to be a significant stressor on Quig as the youngest member of this team, as the newest member of this team, as the most untested, to just kind of lean back a little bit. And if he was the shot caller and if he was a leader for his previous teams, he might bring a bit of that here, but it's very difficult to join an established roster and leave your imprint on it.
Yeah.
It is one of the most stressful experiences of SMITEPro. Because growing up with your boys, easy.
Yeah.
Joining the big leagues and surrounding yourself with strangers, while potentially even moving away from home for the first time, going to be very difficult, I think.
Especially when you're next to, because like you said, not only like, okay, you look to your left, there's Hardcore, you look to your right, there's Shinto. Like Captain Twig and Variety are there.
That's
like,
right.
They probably were on teams that inspired you to play Smite
Exactly.
at this point. So there's that moment where, like you said, it's like, okay, look, I don't care who I am. That's Captain Twig, bro. Like,
I'm here to
he's gone
absorb some knowledge.
Every single world championship, whatever he says, that's like the go button right now. And so it is going to be interesting and very interesting to me. The thing that I had missed on this, not just what Quig is going to be filling, but the void he's leaving behind. So Neil taking Quig's spot and doing a little like rodeo do-si-do and playing now for the Hounds. But it's almost the opposite story, right? You've got Benny, you've got Ducky, who I think Ducky has at least enough of a name for himself, enough presence in the SBL to have that. Coast and Oath coming in for what is technically like their rookie season, even though Coast has been around for a while. It feels like, as opposed to Quig now in in a pond with sharks.
Yep.
Neil's the shark, and there's a bunch of little goldfish nearby him, right? I mean, he's the guy here. And so is he... Trelli, I'm going to ask you the hard question.
Please do.
Is he washed?
I mean, here's what we got to remember. Here's what I want everyone to zone in on. We talked about Panda Cat. There's a reason he was on the way out, right? He was not playing to the level that he was when he left. He took his step away from Smite. He's like, guys, something's not clicking. I got to go. Now he's coming back. He's feeling confident. That's all well and good. Neil was the same way, right? Neil, on his way out, he was not coming off a Worlds run. He was coming off of, some
subpar performance.
Subpar performance, exactly. I don't expect to just come on back without grinding those scrims consistently to just, be like, oh, this is prime Worlds Neil again. I'm not saying he can't get to that point, but these are definitely some players that were out of the league for whatever reasons they decided to, whatever reasons they wanted. Coming back in is going to be difficult. This is a very competitive league. These top-level teams are some of the best we've seen. So I don't expect... coming out of the gate swinging. I think there is going to be some growing pains for just about every team that has a roster change here.
And it's a lot of them.
It is a lot of them. And as you said, like Neil, as the shark with his... I'm not going to call them minnows. I think the Hounds have been playing extremely well.
Yeah.
They have.
Goldfish was not a good analogy.
Yeah,
That's where I went.
I consider them all sharks at this point. But I think Neil might be the one who needs to, sit back and take some knowledge in. You know what I mean? Like, just be like, okay, you guys, how do we like to play? How, I've been able to watch because I've been coaching other teams. I see how you guys like to play, but how do I slot in here? How does Coast like to lane? Those sort of things. There's going to be some growing pains for sure, but I don't expect all the Hounds just to look up to Neil and be like, guide us, Neil. Like, how do you want to play? I think he's going to have to adapt to their play styles for sure.
I think some of it also comes down to Neil's back with Chuck again, so he doesn't have to go with another new coach that he has to learn under. Chuck knows exactly how Neil likes to play, knows how he can now slot Neil with the rest of this team and kind of fit in there. So we were talking about why Quig versus maybe as a question of Neil Ma for the Camelot Kings. I think you put it best earlier is that Neil has been playing competitive for a while, so he doesn't have that experience from this season, doesn't really have as much compared to Quig. But now Neil can jump on to, I'm not going to call the Hounds a lesser team in this case, but one that can definitely be a little bit more malleable with him compared to the playstyle of the Camelot Kings. I feel that the Hounds playstyle fits Neil Ma better than the Kings ones does. And I think that going back with a coach that you're familiar with players that you've played against and players that you've played with over the course of these seasons, I think that this is a great team for Neil Ma to kind of get back in the swing of. And I don't expect the Hounds to immediately jump out the gate and be 4-0, similar to some of the other teams out there. When we think the Camelot Kings in their team, I wasn't thinking, okay, cool, Quig's there. They're just going to start off a 4-0 hot streak. This will take a little bit of time, but I think it's because Neil is going back with Chuck, and Chuck already knows how to work with Neil and Neil's squads. I think that's why it's maybe a better slot for him to go here.
But let's ask the difficult question. Like, let's think about what the Smite fans are thinking right now. Who's better currently? Is it Quig or Neil Ma?
Well, that's Quig.
I'd say
it's Quig, and it's not close.
Yeah.
No, Who's got a higher ceiling? Who's got more room to grow?
Quig.
I'd say Quig.
It's Quig.
But and that's what I'm saying. The Hounds were almost Masters finals.
Yeah,
Let's not forget.
They were third place.
They were
third
damn
place.
They took the Ferrymen to what, 5?
They took them to 5.
And then the
40,
Ferrymen just
45
washed the Oni Warriors. Like, it's crazy that team that could have been second place Masters, and hey, if that semifinals game goes differently, could have won Masters. Is like, yeah, Quig felt better on the Kings. The Kings were not looking that good, and they just lost genetics.
I think it's a case where really both teams kind of lost out. Because, like, I think objectively the Camelot Kings got a little bit worse not having genetics there. They already had, that meshing going with their team. It's going to take them a little bit longer to ramp up with Quig. I think the Hounds going from a third-place team who beat the Dragons, nearly beat the Ferrymen, who had already beat the Only Warriors at that point, especially going to, like, the links that they did. Because, remember, we were looking at the Hounds going, okay, this is probably going to be a team that's going to get, like, 2-0 against some of the big dogs, and it might go 2-1 against some of the lower seeds. No, they were beating the big dogs. They were going 35, 40, 45 minutes every single game against the Ferrymen, which was not easy to do because that's just the way that the meta adapted to at that point. They had so much experience getting to that late game.
Yeah.
And now swapping out who is, I'm not going to say the best player, but one of your best players on the team with Quig to go to a player who doesn't have that gameplay experience at this current meta, who hasn't played competitive in some time. I think that this is a net loss for both teams in this case. I think the better team to make out from this one is the Camelot Kings because they have that better ceiling for Quig. But I think objectively both of these teams have gone negative with their trades.
But we can also talk about maybe some of the emotional aspect of it too. We focus so much of that with genetics. Quig is one of the most positive guys that has ever walked through these doors. Neil Ma is in that conversation.
Yep.
He is probably the most positive
I would say so.
to have walked through these doors.
Neil's the only person I know who will walk out from an 0-2 and he recognizes what went wrong, but he's like okay with it.
Yeah, he has a genuine conversation.
I'm going to do something better with this.
He's going to work on it. There are players that they eat a loss, they go home, they VOD review for 5 hours straight because they can't get over it, right? Those are like the Sinos and the Auroras. There are guys who are going to talk about a loss for 40 minutes directly after a loss in Scrim so they can learn from it and action it immediately afterward. That's your Neil Maz. I believe, I don't know who had said it exactly, but he was complaining about Neil Maz scrims. It's like, you know what, dude? I don't want to scrim the Warriors because he's got to coach these guys for 40 minutes after every single game. So I think there's a lot of great ideas that are going to be floating around. I think it's a great sign of positivity. I think that is one of the most valuable assets you can have as a player is being someone that people want to be around. When you are forced to play together every single day for 3, 4, 8 hours, whatever it is, whatever scrim meta currently is, you got to be able to have a good time. You got to be able to keep it productive. And I think Neil Ma and Quig both fit that role very well.
That's fair. I think that Quig was looking out for the fact that he's going to take in a lot of information going to the Kings. I think his idea
It's a resume move.
Yeah, he is going to be a sponge and just say, like, how do you guys like to play? Suck it all in, and hopefully the team comes out better for it. Because on paper, like, Hounds and Kings, the way they're performing, Hounds were going this way and Kings were kind of plateauing. If Quig is able to, change the way Quig plays, if Variety, if Yark, if BMT, if they're all able to, like, not change the way, that's a weird way to put it, but at the very least give their influence to him and say, hey, we play a little bit differently, we want to try and play this way, etc. I think that was Quig's plan. I think he wants to take in information and just see how much that changes him as a player.
It's going to be a lot. Those are two massive changes on two massive teams that were, I'm going to use the word massive a third time just for fun, massive in phase one, and things are going to be different for him going forward. Good different, bad different, again, all TBD, I guess, at best, and maybe it'll be working out. What we're really going to see is how much these players, if we thought they were a big impact player for their team, how much they were or weren't in a lot of these instances of like, oh, hey, this was someone who like we thought had a huge impact, but they're actually doing better now, so maybe he wasn't even anything for them.
At the end of the day, you're only 20% of the team.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, a lot of these teams probably will look largely the same.
The good news is, to change that part of the conversation, there's one team that had more than 20% change out on them. And now I know, Jmac, me and you were actually talking about this a little bit earlier, and it was specifically because I wanted to mention that when I typed it, I wrote, are the Gladiators or the Satiators? Because they trade out both their frontliners.
Yeah.
You lose Inbound and Scary D. And as you can see on this beautiful graphic, they're nowhere else to be found because they have not been picked up. Kana and Jake end up joining them. So is this an improvement? If so, how much of an improvement is it? I know you were talking earlier about specifically when you trade out both your front lines, how that can change a lot of the game because that is, in a sort of way, half of your team that is now different.
Yeah, I think on paper, mechanical-wise, this is an upgrade for this team. I think that Scaredy has been falling off ever since really he kind of got back into the SPL. He was really strong in the hyper carry solo style of meta. Once we developed away from there, it became your more traditional frontline warriors and guardian style of play. Scaredy started to wane a little bit. And whether that be, what was going on in his personal life, he wasn't able to be here in the studio. He was helping deal with family issues at that, and his mind was elsewhere. At this point, whenever we get down into the LAN environment, Scaredy just was not performing up to what you would expect from Scaredy of seasons of past, even of qualification this own same year. Same thing with Inbound. Inbound has been known to be a great player. He's a world champion when he has on his run his console. He's had many a times where he's played up into the SPL and has had great moments, but just hasn't had an opportunity to really show off those kinds of moments. And it feels like a lot of it is maybe miscommunication or disconnect with the rest of his squad out there, whether that be he's having trouble either getting Stuart to play a little bit more aggressive over in his lane, or Stuart says, hey, I just want to sit back and farm for the next 15, 20 minutes, leave me alone, go do something else elsewhere. Now that you're trading out both of your frontliners for, and I will say objective upgrades mechanically for them, you now have that trade-off of how is the communication going to be for that team. How is Awesome Jake going to go with these guys? Sure, Awesome Jake can make shot calls, but we've shown that Awesome Jake may not necessarily want to conform to the play styles of some of their players. He may not be, and one things that were mentioned, I think, is during his video where he was talking with Sod on stream about this, which was Sod and some of the other players on his team, whenever he was on the Warriors, would say, hey, this looks like a really good god. Maybe you should play this one right now. And he'd go, I don't know about that. Who on the Gilded Gladiators is going to be the one to force Jake to make that kind of a momentum shift? To say, hey, these gods aren't good right now. We know you're really good at them, but we could really use this. Who's going to be the one to tell Jake, hey, Jake, you're going to be playing this god? He's going to go, I don't know, maybe. So
I could see Kiermi doing it. That's about it.
Kiermi would probably be the one, but at the same time, I don't see Kiermi as that kind of aggressive caller as far as communications are going through.
Kick these people, though. You don't think Kiermi spoke up and said, get these guys off my team?
From what I understood in Kiermi's interview, because him and Hazer had discussion, is that a lot of it was like a lot of one-on-ones with each player and Kassir, their coach, kind of talking about decisions that were made there. They all kind of threw their hats in and said, hey, if we had to make any changes, who would it be? Everybody individually to Kassir kind of gave their input and their decisions on that, and that's where the decision of removing both of them inevitably ended up happening through there. But I think in solo lane, this is a massive upgrade for the team. Kana's I think good. That we talked about Kana being the next up in SPL for like the last 2 years, and even during his world runs.
By the Ravens, I think earlier this year, like they had said it, and it was a different Hazer interview at the beginning of the year where they were like, yeah, we needed a solo laner, and if Haddix, like legit, if Haddix hadn't said yes because it's Haddix, no one's ever getting turned down for Haddix,
right?
Then it would have been Kana if it hadn't been him.
So yeah, I think mechanically, yes, this is an upgrade. I think that's very easy to say. It's then going to come down to how do these two players now mesh with what has already been established with this team. We know Stuart's going to be a little bit more passive.
Yeah.
Once he gets his items online, no matter what god he's playing, once he's 5-6 slotted, then he's going to be playing a little bit more aggressive. But Stuart's also kind of a KD player. That's why whenever we jokingly draft him in Fantasy League, it's like, Stuart's not going to ever really cost me fantasy points. He's going to be going, 2-0 or 3-1 during a game.
Or a triple goose egg.
Or a triple goose egg, because Stuart does play for the KD a little bit more, whereas Awesome Jake is going to get in there a little bit more. He's going to play aggressive. He's going to play the Aphrodites and WK. He's going to play the Xing Chens and the emojis of whatnot. So I think for this team, it's going to take some time. I think that we are very likely going to see another Gilded Gladiators bottom seed, if not maybe bottom 2 seed.
Wah.
But once we start getting more closer towards the World's time, those Swords playouts, I think that's when we see the ramp up for the Gladiators.
That'll be a fun team to watch.
For sure.
Just because it's different, I think at this point more than anything. If another phase of what was happening, I think would have been interesting, but because they were making improvements, but it wasn't
marginal, slow improvements.
Yes, it wasn't as grandiose. Essentially, it was like, did Kiermi have a great game? Cool. Then everybody else might have also looked good. Did Kiermi have a great game? Maybe. Then sometimes everybody's stepping up. They could still lose, and Kiermi could be like 8-1. There were definitely times that it was just a little rough for him. So we'll see. Frontline, that's a big difference.
Oh yeah,
but that's all the roster changes.
Woo.
As of now. Of course, every time that seems to be like the sand is settled, something comes through and
kicks it back up,
whisks it away. Yeah, Divisional Stars is going to be what is coming up next, and that is not this weekend, but next weekend that we are going to be bringing in. So you've got sets of teams, Order and Chaos, And those teams are going to be playing each other in a bracket throughout the weekend. The first and second place teams of the event, as Jmac said earlier, those are the captains for Role Stars. So they will then have 2 solo lane teams, 2 jungling teams, 2 mid teams, 2 support teams, 2 carry teams. And then they'll play through Role Stars, and that's going to be a whole different can of eggs to unhatch. What a weird amalgamation of words right there, huh? That froze everybody. Myf looked at me confused, and nobody else had anything to say to me. The good news is I think we do have a graphic to show like what the teams are going to be and what we'll be seeing. So the Manticores, which is comprised of Finoke, Panatom,
Dardes.
The fact that he was in a Warriors
that threw
jersey,
me off the first two.
Jake, and then Vote, the Juggernauts, which is Sot, Adapting, Pagon, Mike, and Netrioid, which I am scared for anyone who has to play that team because that is 3 of the Oni Warriors plus Adapting and PBM. That seems like a really good team. I might need to root for the Juggernauts. So that is going to be the Chaos side of the Divisional All-Stars. The Order side is going to be the Minotaurs and the Titans. The Minotaurs, there are Baskin, you've got Venenu. I skipped over the jungle for some reason, but that's Oath, Hurry, as well as Coast. And then on the Titans, you've got Haddix, you've got Scream, you've got BMT, you've got Genetics, and of course, you've got nice smiling over there, Bara. So those are going to be the 4 teams, 2 from Order, 2 from Chaos to take each other on. And we got about 4 minutes, so we're going to go quickly around the room. And everyone's going to put their vote in on a team that is going to get first. And you know what? We'll be spicy and second, so we can name the captains.
Ooh, I got Minotaurs in first, and second place, I'll take the PBM squad.
Okay.
I still have to familiarize myself with the nomenclature.
Juggernauts.
The Juggernauts, excuse me.
Yeah. Jelly?
I didn't even get to get a good look, man.
Were you not listening?
Maybe put on the glasses that your doctor gave.
Okay, bro. I could see the squads.
You couldn't.
You couldn't visualize them, though.
No, it was just very fast. There was a lot of handsome men on the screen. I lost a little bit of focus there, all right? That's on me. My bad.
So Skip. Yeah, Jmac, go ahead.
Going over to Jmac.
I think I'm also going to put...
Jelly
I'm probably going
abstained.
to put first place Juggernaut, second place Minotaur. I think that's kind of my call for there. And then to remind people of the format, it's best of 5.
Yep.
It's opposite divisions playing against each other first in best of 5s. Then finals best of 5.
Got it on
semi and the third place match best of 3. So it's 3 best of 5s and a best of 3 for the weekend.
Nice. I'm going Juggernauts, Titans.
Really?
Because Juggernauts was the one with
Which
the
one
3
was the
Warriors. Titans was the one that was like Haddix, Scream,
Got it.
Bara.
That was a good choice, too.
And also...
I saw Haddix and Scream, and I was like, that's my boy.
and these were...
Scream's going to be really good in a tournament like this.
I think there might be also confusion that Genetics was on the Order side, despite the fact he's now technically what would be a Chaos side. These were voted before a lot of these roster changes happened, so that's where the votes for these kind of like MVPs of their spots were bumped in there. So that's why he's still over there.
Yeah. He's in a... That was topsy-turvy.
We're having some for fun tournaments, guys, okay? That's what it is.
It's funsies.
Let's just get it out there.
And you know what?
It'll be fun to watch.
Winners then go to Role Stars, which is all pros plus the 2 teams we talked about at the front, the SCC, the Valkyries, and the Wargs. And that is going to be, I mean, that's about as fun for funsies of an event as you can get, where it's like nobody, you're going to have a carry playing mid, a carry playing jungle.
Junglers are going to have fun.
Junglers are going to have fun.
They're the best. They're the best.
Solo laners? Mechanically?
I mean, I don't
Probably
care.
going to have fun.
Wait, do we get the vote jungle back?
Shelley,
from the
who are
carry
you
squad?
in Role Stars? This is getting way ahead of it. This isn't even written down. Who do you think is, what roles do you think are going to be like superior?
Yeah, I think it's...
Also, I do want to, sorry to cut in immediately.
Oh.
I believe it is set up in that bracket that like the only way a carry versus carry or like a mid versus mid like
Finals.
is for finals. They are on opposite sides of the bracket. So
It's either solo or mid. No way, it's jungle. Those guys are bums. I'm going mid.
You're a bot.
Just because I'm a support player, I'm going to say the supports.
That's the second best. That's fine.
I'm gonna abstain. Jelly did it earlier. Apparently we get one.
Was this an option? We get one a year per show.
Probably a year.
All right, cool. I'm holding
Damn,
mine.
wait, I probably abstained already.
I just want to say that I was roasting like Myflin as a jungler, not all the junglers in the league.
Yeah. All the junglers in the
But you
league.
did, though.
Real
You did.
good.
I'm roasting all the junglers in the room.
I'm going junglers.
But you got the league though, because you. Because you said they can't win.
I'm going junglers.
You weren't talking about because I'm not.
I'm not
playing it.
abstaining anymore. I'm voting junglers.
Yeah, they're the best players.
That's it for this one. Look, you can tell when the show's gone a little long because it starts to get a little loopy, and by that I mean I'm stopped paying as much attention, which means it is time to wrap. And normally I'd ask you guys about like patch notes or something because that was yesterday, but I've got better, superior minds, no offense, that are going to come in and talk about the changes that they decided because it's
how many rings they got?
Designers. I don't know. I don't look at their hands, bro. How long has it been since that ring got though?
Yeah, it was on console.
Yeah, it was on console too. Yeah. So we're going to kick it to a break here. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Hit the like button. If you're watching on Twitch, stick around because we are going to be talking with the devs for a dev insight. We had a patch yesterday. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk to them. And if you're watching on YouTube as well, make sure you just find that video because it'll be on this channel more than likely that you're watching this. So stick around and we'll be back.
Peach it.
Woo!